The 2025 NHL offseason is officially upon us, and so begins year 3 of the Chicago Blackhawks' full-scale, tear-it-down style rebuild. GM Kyle Davidson said after the 23-24 season that another season in the basement of the league standings would be unacceptable. And then the team proceeded to sign a 12-month lease renewal to remain in the basement. So you have to imagine that, barring a miraculous draft lottery win in 2026, this should be the last chance the Blackhawks have during this rebuild to pick as high in the draft as they will this year. So, what should they do to take advantage? I'm going to go over several different options and directions they could go, not just with their first pick, but the next several picks as well. First, I'll just say that my ideal move, given that he's available, is to trade up to second overall and select Michael Misa. There is so much depth in the Blackhawks prospect pool, and it's time to use that quantity and use it towards some quality. But I will be approaching this video as if they will be selecting at each of their own spots without any movement. Therefore, I highly suspect Misa will be unavailable. So, to start off with third overall, first off is my preferred selection, Brampton Steelheads winger Porter Martone. Serving as team captain this past season, Martone put up 37 goals and 61 assists in 57 games in the OHL, averaging out to an impressive 1.72 points per game, second among draft eligibles, only behind Michael Misa. He also played for Team Canada in both the U20 World Juniors and the Men's World Championship, scoring a goal in the junior tournament. Some people may look at his size and immediately think bruising power forward, but he plays more of a skill game, donning some of, if not the best playmaking ability in the draft, to go along with a deadly wrister and silky smooth hands. His best NHL comparable is Corey Perry, and if that means he'll win a Hart Trophy and contribute in the playoffs until he's 40, that sounds like a worthwhile pick to me. Next up on my list is Boston College center James Hagens. After recording a monstrous 102 points in 58 games for the US NTDP in his draft -1 season, he set a new U20 World Juniors record by scoring 22 points in 7 games for the Americans. This sets some high expectations for him going to BC, especially since he would be replacing Will Smith on that legendary line with Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault. He ended up having a very good season, tallying 11 goals and 26 assists over 37 games for a clean point per game average, but fans expected more from him, causing his draft stock to slip a bit. Even still, third on his team in points and second in assists is fabulous for a freshman. He also had a solid showing at the U20 World Juniors with 9 points in 7 games en route to a gold medal. I think the only reason to be a little bit hesitant on drafting Hagens if you're the Blackhawks is his undersized frame, since you've already got several promising young players and prospects under the 6-foot mark. But he is exactly the type of player Davidson has valued in the past. Speedy and agile skater, skill for days, and very high hockey IQ. He is most often compared to Jack Hughes based on his playstyle, and if he turns into something close to that, he may come back to haunt you if you pass on him. After Martone and Hagens, there's a step down in the prospect quality and overall upside for me, but there are still a few interesting and very realistic options that Chicago should be considering. First on this next tier is Swedish center Anton Frondell. He is maybe the most physically mature player at the top of this draft at 6'1", 205, and he plays like it too, using his frame to his advantage offensively as well as to punish opponents near the boards. Playing this past season at age 17 in the Hockeyallsvenskan, one tier below the top league in Sweden, he finished with 11 goals and 14 assists in 29 games. Probably his greatest strength is his shot, which is among the best in the draft class. He's the kind of player who plays well at center, but could likely shift to wing should that be his best fit on the Blackhawks down the line, making him a seemingly safe and projectable pick. As far as player comps go, he says he wants to emulate Alexander Barkov, but one comparison I saw that I really liked for him was Philip Forsberg. All that sounds great, but what got me down on Frondell a bit is his inconsistency. He started the season with only 3 goals and 3 assists in his first 18 games, including a 6-game pointless streak, before a really good end to the regular season where he had 8 goals and 11 assists in 11 games. Then in the postseason, he started off with a 2-point game, but didn't record another point until 9 games later. He is a really nice prospect and very much worthy of a top 5 to 10 pick, but I think you'd be leaving a little bit to be desired on the table if you took him at 3. Finally, I'll kind of lump these last two together, not because they're extremely similar, because they're not, but because they would fill the same spot in your lineup, that being a middle 6 center. These two are Jake O'Brien of the Brantford Bulldogs and Caleb Denoye of the Moncton Wildcats. I watched a lot of O'Brien this season, as I was often tuned in to watch Merrick Van Acker and 71 goal scorer Nick Lardis, and I really loved what I saw from him. Very shifty skater with great hands and absolutely amazing playmaking vision. He's drawn comparisons to Elias Pettersson, but he himself compared his game to Wyatt Johnston. Denoye, on the other hand, was not a player I was able to watch this year, but he also had a very productive season in the queue. Another good skater with high hockey IQ and playmaking ability, but with more shutdown qualities than O'Brien. One of the biggest reasons Hawks fans like the idea of drafting Denoye is that his most frequent player comparison is Jonathan Toews. As a Hawks fan myself, I gotta say that's awfully tempting. Here's where I stand personally on this selection. As I said in the intro, this should be the last time the Blackhawks select this early in the draft for a long time. And when you're selecting early, particularly in the top 3, you should be trying to add a superstar to your lineup, not depth. To me, the most likely spot for Frondell, O'Brien, and Denoye, should they hit, is on the second line or possibly third. This is the time where you need to prioritize players who can hang on a top line with Connor Bedard. If I had it my way, they would trade up to 2 and draft Misa, but if that's not the case, I believe the only players who project highly enough to eventually play on a top line are Martone and Hagens. Frondell could absolutely prove me wrong and make it to a first line, but I don't think it's nearly as likely as it is for Martone or Hagens. So I would go for the swing here versus the safe pick. Moving on to the 25th overall pick, which was acquired from Toronto at the trade deadline 2 years ago. Before my list for players that could be available at 25, I think it's possible for Chicago to trade up a handful of spots depending on if there's a player they really like. And I have a few I think could be excellent additions that I would imagine won't make it to 25. While I do believe there's a real chance he's available without moving up, Malcolm Spence has a lot of the tools that the Blackhawks covet and have been targeting in the past drafts, along with some tools that are missing from much of the prospect pool. The University of Michigan commit spent the last 2 seasons in the OHL serving as one of the Erie Otters' alternate captains, and this season scored well over a point per game, including 32 goals. At 6'2", 201, he brings that size component while also bringing some excellent skating speed and skill. All this on top of being a natural leader makes him, in my eyes, worthy of moving up to select. He reminds me of Boone Jenner, and that goes beyond just playstyle, as Jenner is also a leader on his team, entering the 5th season as the Blue Jackets captain. The Blackhawks have likely seen a lot of Spence, given 2023 second rounder Martin Misiak has been his Otters teammate, so it wouldn't surprise me if they zeroed in on him. Next up, to me, Cullen Potter is a prototypical Blackhawks draftee, one of, if not the best skater in the draft class, impressive offensive ability, hardworking and tenacious, and under 6 feet tall. That last bit is why some of you watching may be averse to using another first round pick on another small forward, but this kid has some very promising attributes that can make him an important piece on a good team once he develops. And to get that in the back half of the first round is very enticing. The way he plays is very similar to Jesper Bratt, 5'10", but very speedy and shifty and knows how to create high danger chances. If there's one ex-Blackhawk that any fan would want back, it's Brandon Hagel, and drafting Carter Bear might get you back what you've been missing. Beyond how funny a guy named Bear playing for Chicago would be, he brings a ton of hockey sense, two-way ability, and physicality, and blends it with really good offensive skills, as evidenced by his production in the WHL. Like I said, he plays a lot like Brandon Hagel, and that's not just me saying that. He said it himself, that's who he models his game after. I definitely see him going very early in the draft despite his season-ending Achilles injury, so would probably have to move up pretty far to secure him if he's your guy. The final player on my potential trade-up list is Lyndon Lakovic. Another guy I would think is off the board pretty quickly, seeing as he's a big body with an extremely high-level shot and playmaking ability. At the Combine, he said he plays like Tage Thompson, but is trying to pick up some things from Matthew Nyes, which, if he's able to put on some weight, will make it for a pretty reasonable projection. He's last on this list though, because unless he really slides, I think you're going to be moving up too far for it to be worth what you'll likely have to give up. but he's a player to keep an eye on as picks are made. Now for some players that are much more likely to still be available at 25th overall. Atop this portion of my list is Shane Van Sage. Michigan State winger has the mold of a perfect power forward. His physical game is top notch, both his hitting and his engagement in puck battles. He is also a skilled stick handler with a pro level release. His skating isn't a strength per se, but it doesn't hold him back from contributing. He describes himself as comparable to Josh Anderson, in that he uses his size and strength to his advantage. Not far behind him is Jack Murtagh. I think he would fit like a glove in this prospect system. He doesn't play a flashy game, it's just straight up hardworking, tenacious, and physical. He has excellent speed and skating skills, and he shoots as well as just about anybody in the class. Elite prospects sees shades of Chris Kreider and Yuri Kulik, but I also see a lot of Alex Killorn in his game, which lends nicely to being a support winger for a play driver. A name I've heard a lot of Hawks fans interested in is Václav Nestrashil. Seeing as this is their second pick in the first round, it makes sense to take a swing on a project, and Nestrashil would definitely be that. At 6'6", 185, he has a lot of room to fill in his massive frame. He is so lanky that there is a level of clumsiness when he plays, but he displays lots of qualities that, if they progress, could turn him into a top 6 winger once he gets used to his frame. He reminds me of Alexi Protas, not just in size but in playstyle, and based on how he bursts onto the scene, that could be worth going for with this selection. If he is the pick, it's a good thing this draft is decentralized so that Kyle doesn't have to say his team name again.
From the Muskegon Lumberjacks.
Next up, Braden Coots is a player cut from the same cloth as Carter Bear. Extremely hardworking center with great forechecking, high motor, and dangerous offensive instincts. There's a good chance he goes about 5 to 10 picks before 25th overall, which is why he's this low on this list. But if he slides, then he is absolutely worth considering. I think a player similar to Robbie Fabry is what Coots can become at the NHL level. I've become a big fan of Eric Nielsen and what he brings to the table. He's a very good skater, which is always a plus if you're the Hawks, and is a responsible two-way center who uses his hockey sense and skating to play a strong defensive game, likely turning into an effective penalty killer once he reaches the NHL. While you can argue playing on a championship team helped his offensive numbers, you can also argue that Nielsen was a key contributor on a good team. Elite prospects player comp for him is Jake Evans. Finishing off this section is another Swede in Milton Gastreen. He is also a center, but with several highly projectable qualities that would make him an ideal bottom 6 player. He brings solid size and strength as well as impressive skating, high hockey IQ, and reliability that makes him a trusted two-way forward. He stated at the Combine he wants to play like Gabriel Landeskog, which ought to perk up your ears given that Landeskog was part of maybe the best line in hockey for an extended period. There's a decent chance that a handful of these players are also available when the Blackhawks select again at 34th overall, but not all of them will. It'll be up to Davidson and the rest of the staff to determine who they like best and who they're sure won't fall to them 8 picks later. If none of those players are available at 34th overall, William Moore is my top prospect should he be on the board. He does pretty much everything well, making him a very safe and projectable player with even more upside and room to improve. Likely a center at the next level with flexibility to shift to wing, even just temporarily. Compares to Charlie Coyle. Another interesting US prospect is Will Horkoff. Son of former NHLer Sean Horkoff, Will is a massive forward with promising power forward traits and tendencies, with impressive smarts, puck skills, shooting, and playmaking to go with his physicality in every zone. He's a very enticing prospect. His skating needs some work, which may turn the Blackhawks off when it comes to drafting him, but there's no reason he can't improve it to at least NHL average by the time he hits the NHL. He compares to Mason Marchment. If they draft Mason West, the Blackhawks will be drafting another star football player that chose hockey, as they did last year with AJ Spelcy. While 34th overall may be a tad early, the tools he possesses are extremely tantalizing. He's got a giant frame and excellent skating, which is an exciting base to build off of, as he surely will be a several year-long project. If he blossoms and continues to improve his physical game, he could turn into a top 6 unicorn of a power forward. I could see him turning into a player like Alex Tuck. The 4th American in a row in this section, Cole McKinney is a defensive menace down the middle. He projects as a bottom 6 center with excellent face-off skills and defensive elements such as forcing turnovers and trapping opponents on the boards. He combines this with high pace of play and offensive ability, including passing, shooting, and strong net front play. I see a bit of JT Comfort in his game. Another Swede I'm really high on is Eddie Yenborg. He's a high-energy winger with a large frame and constant motor. When asked who the toughest Swedish player to play against is, outside of Anton Frondell and Victor Eklund, Milton Gastrin's answer was Jenborg. He started the season in Sweden's junior league and halfway through the season was promoted to the SHL. His production wasn't anywhere near what it was in junior, but the fact that he stuck in the top league in Sweden at age 17 is impressive as hell. He may very well be available at the end of the second round, but he's projectable enough that if there's no one you're super high on here, he'd be worth reaching a bit for. My comparable for him is Dakota Joshua. Lastly, the biggest faller in this year's draft is Ivan Rabkin. During his draft -1 season, he broke a record in Russia's junior league previously held by Matvey Michkov, scoring 58 points as a 16-year-old. This season, he struggled to produce in the higher leagues and made the decision to come to North America and play for the
Muskegon Lumberjacks.
He performed much better in the USHL in both production and off-puck game. His main strengths are his shooting, playmaking, and physicality. He was suspended multiple times during his USHL tenure, which is cause for concern, as is his pace of play. But if he hits, his ceiling is so high that it could be worth taking a bit of a risk here. I struggled coming up with a good comp for him, but Elite Prospects has his comparables as Barrett Hayton and Ridley Gregg. Finally, I'll just rifle through some names that I could see being available at the 62nd overall selection, which Chicago acquired from Dallas in the Max Domi trade 2 years ago. Peyton Kettles is a big right shot D who projects as a bottom pair shutdown D, which means he could in theory pair well with Kevin Korchinski down the road. Even if that's not the case, adding another D prospect to the right side would certainly be welcome. I would have also had Carter Amico in this range, but he said at the Combine he met with 30 teams, and Chicago was one of the 2 that he didn't meet with, so what are you going to do? He compares to Brandon Carlo. Hayden Papenicus is a massive center with good skating and offensive ability who projects as a solid 4th, possibly 3rd line center. He compares to Shane Pinto with likely a much lower ceiling. Denver commit Christian Epperson spent this year feeding off Michael Misa's dominance in the OHL. If he's put onto a line with a play driver, he could turn into a solid support winger in the NHL. And being an overager, he could be playing pro sooner than some of the others in this range. He compares loosely to Zach Hyman. Theos Toxelius is a very smart and deceptive forward with high caliber vision and playmaking. As the season progressed, he was also able to show more flashes of defensive dependability and use of his 6'3" frame. He models his game after Joel Eriksson-Ek. Charlie Serrato has been passed on the past 2 drafts, but playing at Penn State this past season raised his draft stock significantly. He's a very straightforward, meat and potatoes kind of player who plays a more energy-driven game than anything else, putting his all into every shift. Since he's a double overager, he may be like Epperson in that he may be ready to play pro hockey rather soon. I compare him to Ryan Donato. If Chicago is wanting to add a goalie to the prospect pool, Alexei Medvedev is one who may be available around this range and is one of the higher end goalies in this draft in my opinion. He was the 1B on a stacked London Knights team, and while he didn't start in the playoffs or Memorial Cup, he put up solid numbers during the regular season. He plays very relaxed and steady, using athletic maneuvers when he needs to, which, while he won't be as good, reminds me of Carey Price. So what do you think of my suggestions? Is there anyone I'm blatantly forgetting about you think would be available at these selections? And what's your preferred outcome for the first pick? Let me know in the comments. Appreciate you watching till the end. Thank you, and take it sleazy.